Here we are. It's Marcus, and I'm sitting with Leonora Oppenheim. It's kind of darkish for you in that room, and it's darkish here because Leonora is on the other side of the planet in the UK. England proper? It's not Wales or
England
something?
proper,
England proper?
Somerset. Yeah.
Somerset. Okay, very cool. The old marcher lands, as the old marcher lords used to call it in the 13th and 14th century. A very rough part of the world it was then, I can tell you. But it's not a history lesson, right? So I met Leonora a few years ago through just following actually Ella Saltmarsh, who's somebody you should look it up. She's looks after the Long Time Project, which I've introduced you guys to. And I came across Leonora through just a post that Ella had made, and I actually signed up and did a course, 5 weeks I think it was, on becoming resilient, which was just a lovely embodied practice. It just really tied in with my work with interplay and all that sort of stuff. So it was very affirming, and I thank you for that, Leonora. Even now, it was beautiful. And since then, Leonora and I have kind of stayed in touch a little bit, and I sent you a copy of my book on neo-humanism and yearning and so on, just because I think you're a great individual. Now, Leonora is a practicer of Feldenkrais and other embodied things. And I'm going to ask you, Leonora, can you introduce yourself as you would to somebody you met them in an elevator, you're going up to a workshop or something? How do you introduce yourself to people?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you in a way in this format. Nice to speak to you. Let's put it like that. So I'm Leonora Oppenheim. Yes, I live in Somerset, England, and I am British. I was born in London, lived in London most of my life, and now I live in a very beautiful, rural, not so battle-worn place as Marcus remembers it from the 13th century. Very bucolic environment. And it's always interesting to be asked, what do I do? Because I'm a very multidisciplinary person. And so the answer always varies depending who I'm speaking to. But in a very broad sense, I would say that I work in art, design, and movement. I'm an educator. I'm a lecturer in university. So I work at a university here in England called Bath Spa University, and I am a lecturer in product and furniture design. That is the very pragmatic side of what I do. And then I am also a practitioner and teacher of the Feldenkrais method, which some of you may have heard of and may not have heard of. That is a movement practice which helps release tension from the body and teaches people about how their body moves. So it's a practice about embodiment through awareness. So the more awareness you have of how the body moves, the more we can move with ease through the world. And then I have an art practice, which the other two kind of teaching practices inform. And that art practice is very much about movement and the body, especially in the landscape.
Yeah. A beautiful introduction, thank you. And this is, of course, why I've asked Leonora to speak about futures feeling, because from my experience with the time I spent with Leonora in her own course, it's very much that somatic sense of the body and how do we even relate to it. And of course, the other thing I just think is I'm really gleeful about is the fact that you've got a great bookshelf behind you, just like I have. So
I positioned myself today in front of the bookshelf rather than in the kitchen over there, just to match your extraordinary collection over there.
Yeah, so that's wonderful too. So like all people, we're multifaceted and very rich. So my questions, I have 3 questions for you, Leonora. And the first one is, how would you describe your embodied practice, please?
It's a great question because I think that embodied practice holds so many parts of ourselves, and we may be people who follow a yoga practice or a meditation practice or any number of disciplines that we could be introduced to. But as I've progressed through my understanding of embodiment, the more and more personal it's become. So I think when I went to university, when I was 19, I was introduced to yoga in the university campus.
Mhm.
And that was the first time anyone had asked me to think about my body, even though I was a very sporty kid. So I had used my body instinctively and athletically for a long time without actually being asked to think about the body. And I think for me, my embodied practice over my adult life has developed through many different disciplines. And now it's just this very deep relationship with myself that I'm actually listening to the body in a very still way and just asking my body what it wants to tell me.
Yeah.
And so my embodied practice now is like a very deep connection to my intuition and my internal voice. And that has developed over a long period of time. But I could add all the different disciplines that have led me there. But let's just summarize it as yoga, meditation, and Feldenkrais.
Nice. So there's an inner listening that you're. I hear that in the kind of the thread of what you're saying there, and you work with that. You help others, like the course I did on resilience. You help others tune in, don't you? Would that is that a good term, tuning in, or would you describe it
Yeah,
in
I think
another way?
tuning in is a great term. Yeah, I very much felt with the Becoming Resilient course, the offering, that there's something incredibly simple about listening to yourself, but people aren't really offered it in such a simple way and in a day-to-day way. And I really wanted to offer people, especially people who were really at the low end of their battery. So I think of our energy levels like those battery bands of like
Yeah, and the
green,
last year.
orange, red, and thinking about how a lot of us operate a lot of the time between orange and red. It's very rare that people in adult contemporary life feel like they're really fully powered up and energized. And I think that that's an embodiment question. I think that people, most of our cultures, are trained to override physical sensation, which operates like an information system. And if we see the battery on our phone is at 5%, we plug the phone in and we make sure that our battery is full to go out for the day. And we don't really do that for ourselves. And so, what I want to be able to teach people is that there are really simple listening and tuning in techniques that can help us begin to understand the language that our body speaks so that we can make interventions before we're in the red for too long, because of course we live in a contemporary phenomenon of burnout, and burnout is really past the red category. It's at the end bottom of the battery, and once you stay there for too long, it's very difficult to get out of that place. So resilience in my mind is about listening. It's not about overriding.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of dialogue about resilience being something like, well, in Britain, we would say the British stiff upper lip, we would say just mind over matter and you can just get on with it. And that is definitely how I was raised. And so I've been spending a lot of my time unlearning that kind of philosophy towards life, which is override, override, override.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's stop that and start listening and adjusting our habits and behaviors according to what we hear rather than what we think we should be able to do. And that is a very converse point of view. It's taken me many years to kind of get to the point where that seems obvious to me. And
Yeah.
so I want to be able to introduce that to more people.
That's beautiful. And yeah, to me, it's even in my own work, whether I'm in a classroom at a university or in a workshop somewhere in India or something, it the first thing is that inner listening, that stilling in some way, inviting people to still. Now, you said in your introduction that you are you have an embodied practice, but you also have an artistic practice, a visual arts practice. Do you see that informing, or what's the kind of relationship it had between your visual arts self, you might say, and your embodied self?
Mm. So, um, a bit like I was a sporty kid, I was an arty kid. And learning art in traditional education is learning to draw technically, learning to draw the outside of things. And through my embodied practice from yoga onwards, through up until training to be a Feldenkrais practitioner, which I'm very recently qualified in. So I finished my Feldenkrais training last year, which, if anyone knows about Feldenkrais, that's a long training. That's a 4-year training of listening, essentially. And what I found is that my art practice changed quite significantly once I started listening internally. And I would think about the body a lot when I was younger. I would do a lot of life drawing. I was very interested in the physical form of the body, the landscape of the body in the landscape, how those two interrelate. All of that was very interesting to me, but it was almost always on the outside, on the surface image.
Mm-hmm.
And through a lot of yoga and meditation, I began to feel what I would now call a somatic response, which is something that comes from the inside out, which is a deeper connection and a feeling that I would like to try and express through painting, drawing, photography. I do all of those things. And I'm looking to express something of the ephemeral feeling that we humans
Okay.
have, especially in nature. I know nature is a bit of a problematic term, but for want of a better word, the rural landscape nature. I'm a city kid. I grew up in cities. So I came to the countryside and was like, oh, this is so beautiful. This is so green. This is so uh, idyllic, you know. And then I've lived here nearly 6 years now, and that type of listening that I do for my body, I'm also doing with the landscape. It's becoming a practice that I'm applying in situ in my environment so
Yeah.
that I can then respond with the art that I want to make rather than trying to paint a landscape. I hope that
Mm.
makes sense, how I just described that.
You know, it does to me. I'm lucky. I grew up with visual art parents, both sides, and so I've been surrounded by visual art and the language of visual arts all my life. And of course, I do experience it very much as a somatic expression of, and there is an inner outer relationship. As so, it's not one or the other. And of course, I can relate to you moving from the surface of the body to somehow the body in situ, the body as a landscape in a sense, or something, you know, there's, yeah, whatever it is that's happening there, I can see that very clearly. It's
The body as an emotional landscape,
yeah,
and a psychological landscape.
yep,
Something very interesting about that for me.
absolutely. Now, could you tell us about a powerful embodied moment in your own life or practice? It could be something that happened to you or something that you saw happen to others through this embodied practice that you've grown and nurtured over decades. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this question. I think because we're talking about all parts of my practice, but the art practice, when I arrived in Somerset, I just listened again. What is my instinct? What do I want to do? And I began taking my camera out in the early morning, just when it was still dark, and taking my camera up into the field above my house, and just being very playful with a remote control and a setting up my camera, waiting for the light to begin to appear, and then just using my body. I wouldn't describe them as self-portraits, but they are using my body as like a cipher for something. But there is something very special about that time of day, either, this kind of, um, is it numinous is the word, this kind of
Yes, I
moment,
love that word.
this,
Yeah.
this moment where we're not quite sure. And it's the moment where the sun rises or the sun sets. For me, the sun rises a little bit even more mysterious than the sunset, because you're not quite sure what the weather's going to do, what the light is going to do. And I have just found so much freedom in this playfulness of jumping and dancing and running around. And if you look at my photographs and some of my artwork, you'll understand a little bit what I'm talking about. But it's the surprises of what the camera can capture, which I don't even know what I'm looking for. And those are the moments where I feel like I'm channeling something. I can't put a name on it, but the images that have come out of those playful experiments with the remote control in the field at that particular hour of the day are such remarkable. What was the question? Embodied
Practice.
experience?
That's I call it embodied practice.
Embodied practice.
Or actually embodied moment. I'm looking at my notes now.
Yeah, embodied moment.
That's
This
it.
is what I mean by the embodied moment. So there's something captured on what we call a photograph, right? It's a digital camera. It's capturing something. I don't know what it is. I'm not looking through the lens.
Yeah.
I am fully embodied in the moment. The only thing I'm doing is pressing a remote shutter. And through that practice, I have made the most extraordinary discoveries of these embodied moments, which are so ephemeral and so transitory. They don't really mean anything, but there's a magic in them that I find really electrifying.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. And it touches on something that I think is really important, which is the power of repetition. The
Mm-hmm.
repetition of a practice. It's almost like you're doing some kind of visual journaling.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
do you, when you obviously you will go through the images from the day, or maybe you do it once a week. I don't know how you do it, but do you find you're just experiencing, or do you read narrative into it? Do you find ways of weaving meaning into the visual unfolding of those moments?
I do. I've told myself a whole story of what is going on.
Great.
Um, So the feeling that I have inside when I put the digital card into my computer and the images come up and I start going through them, that's the time that I discover what has been captured. And um, that's when I begin to think of myself as being in no time. So we're talking about futures, but in this practice that I have been doing in Somerset, I felt, especially during the COVID years where we were in lockdown, like I really wasn't bumping into anyone, and I really try and go at a time of day where I'm not going to bump into anyone. So there's a timelessness. I mean, there is a power a power line going over the field, which gives some indication of what century we're in. But in my imagination, time had collapsed. There is no time. I am walking and playing in this field. I could be thousands of years ago. I could be thousands of years in the future. And what I got the sense of, even though I'm alone, is that I'm with many, many, many generations of humans, animals, ecosystems, playing in this timeless space where everything is energy and spirit. And so you'll see if you look at the photographs, I brought neon fabric into this play. So first of all, I just did it with my body. And then I brought this neon fabric in because there was this story in my mind that I am an infiltrator into this timeless space. I come from the city to the country, and there's something that I have to ingratiate myself in this new ecosystem, this new landscape. I have to make friends with it. I have to feel like I am welcome, or I could be welcomed into this space. And so I began to throw these neon fabrics over and over and over again up in the air. And you'll see a series of images, which I've titled Before They Awake, which is about before the contemporary humans awake and our current world comes to life in the day. There is a whole parade of neon spirits or neon ghosts that are walking
I
through this
love that.
landscape with me.
I love that. And that, I mean, you're ticking a whole bunch of these boxes in my head, which of course would be other conversations, because I talk about living in the ruins of the future, talk about ghosts of place, and of course
Mm-hmm.
my history brain, like I said when you told me you're in Somerset, immediately I've got these associations that go like that. But so it's a wonderful thing, and I'm sure I have seen. I visited. You have a website, and some of those images with those material things are on the website. They're your images of, and you're telling the story now because it's been a couple of years since I actually went and looked. That I'm now actually getting a narrative to go with the context of the beautiful movement of a piece of like silk. It looked to me, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they become their own characters in the air.
Mm.
Just this repetition of throwing, and because it's such a fast shutter speed, that some of them look like sculptures in the landscape. Some of
Yeah.
them, if the shutter speed is longer, they're much more ephemeral, and there's some
Yeah.
transparency through
Liquid.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I wanted to just add in is the reason I chose this neon synthetic chiffon fabric to bring out into the landscape is because when I first arrived here, I walked in the woods and I saw these neon spots on the trees. And someone explained to me that this is the foresters talking to each other. They have their own language to decide how to manage the forest, which trees to chop down, which to leave, when to coppice, all of
Yeah.
these different decisions. They are through a sign language of neon spray paint on the trees. And so
Mm.
that to me became the fundamental part of this story, the kind of crux of the narrative of my work, which is that neon is the human intervention in a rural environment where everything is browns and greens. The
Yeah.
neon kind of pops out so that human eyes can see it.
Yeah.
And that then became the symbol of human intervention and human management in the landscape, which to my city eyes, I didn't understand, of course, that how managed the landscape is by human beings.
Yeah, no, it's a very important point. And to me, it points to something else, is the way human beings are sign makers. And of course, this relates to the final question that would have for you, which would be: do you see that your embodied practices having relevance to Foresight Futures work, or should I better phrase that as Foresight Futures consciousness? Given that, let's say, the neon is signing or signifying things. I don't want to put words into your mouth, so but that's the question: is do you
Yeah.
see your embodied practice having relevance to Foresight Futures work?
Yes. And I'm going to think about how to respond.
Mm.
And it's something about technology
Mm-hmm.
and the technology of the body. So I ran a workshop recently, which was about artificial virtual reality.
Mm.
And the idea was that we didn't have real VR headsets. I made a paper VR headset and printed an image inside of a future world. And we created a speculative scenario where these people were invited to take part in a workshop where they were exploring future worlds using the VR technology. But then the VR technology had broken down in the narrative, and they were just a static image. The glitch of the technology had broken down. And then what do we need to do at that point? We need to go into our bodies. We need to use the technology of the body rather than the digital technology.
Yeah.
And there's something very interesting about futures and how we survive in the future through instinct and through embodied knowledge. And I feel very passionately about the fact that we are obsessed with current technologies, without being fully knowledgeable about what the body can do. And I came to embodiment as a teacher through working on climate change and working on futures in terms of how we're going to survive on this planet. And after 15, 20 years of working on climate change communications as a designer,
Yeah.
I thought what we really need to know is how to survive in our own bodies in this lifetime on this planet right now. If we can be safe in our body, then we could possibly be safe on our planet. But that is a very deep conversation.
It is.
But essentially, it's about teaching people to feel safe in their bodies so that they feel emotionally regulated enough to deal with the difficult things that are coming in the future.
Such a rich insight there. That's fantastic. And I love the workshop. I think it's fantastic.
The workshop was really fun. It's a difficult topic, the idea that planet Earth is dying, we need to go and find future worlds. That's a difficult, heavy topic. But to do it through the medium of a kind of speculative fiction, and through the medium of asking people to augment and change their bodies by creating collages and materials on the body. It's a longer story, but it was very immersive and engaging way to think about futures, but using the body as the vehicle, not the digital technology.
Yeah. That's brilliant. And it links in, you've got no idea how many points of the conversations we've had so far that this links into. We've done collaging, we've done all sorts of stuff. So you're linking it in. And of course, what it tells me, and I'd like, hopefully the people listening will get this, is that the creative possibilities of using embodiment, and of course the embodiment is extended. If I hold, where is it? Hold up this lovely 4B pencil. I love soft pencils. So I hold this pencil. It's an extension of me. The pencil is an extension.
Oh.
And of course, it's a technology too. And where can we go with simple things like, let's say that the VR headset that you created for them, so that they could enter the space. We've done mask work in this course.
Yeah,
you know,
very similar.
all of that sort of stuff. And you're in your own space working with a whole bunch of lucky people at the Bath Spa Uni. I knew a guy at the Bath Spa, David Hicks. He was there years ago. I don't think he was reading. Do you know David Hicks?
I don't. I should find out who he is.
But I think it's almost certainly he's retired. And but wonderful man. And it must be a really innovative university, because it's
they're allowing me to run in practice,
and they've let you in the front doors. Like me, I'm in this conservative university, and yet I somehow survive.
We were talking about that the other day, Trojan horses, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sitting in product and furniture design, but really
what a great place to sit. But I'm sitting in the Bachelor of Arts.
Yeah.
So anyway, Leonora, I'd love to continue the conversation, and I've got these ideas that I might sort of talk to you about, but not right now, because I think we've covered what I'd like to cover in this session, and I'm going to thank you so much, give you a virtual hug for your starting your day in Somerset. Go out and enjoy the beautiful rolling green fields of that part of the UK, and I will stop recording and then I'll say thanks properly again.
Great. Nice to see you all. Have a great day.